New setup, who dis? I gave myself bangs this morning. So I tried Veganuary. For those of you who don't know what Veganuary is, it is where you are vegan for the month of January. This is basically for people that are not vegans, either just to kind of give your body a reset after the Dionysian gorge fest that is Christmas and Thanksgiving, just the holidays in general. A lot of people like to eat healthier anyway then, and I've been thinking about doing Veganuary. I did a half-assed Veganuary a couple years ago. You can check out my playlist for that, I'll link it below, where I ate a vegan meal every single day, and my challenge to myself was to eat a different vegan meal every single day. I would do snacks, desserts, breakfast, lunches, and dinners, but not every single meal I ate every single day was vegan. But this time, I didn't half-ass it. I was vegan for the entire month of January. In fact, I am still vegan because it is, as I record this, January 29th. So I am still at the end of Veganuary, but I'm still technically, I've been vegan now for like 4 weeks. And look at how much more beautiful and healthy I look. So often when an omnivore like me does like a, I tried being vegan for a while video, like you'll see a lot of like, oh, and woe is me, it was so hard, and oh, I missed this and that. That's not the intention of this video. I do not mean to bash veganism or glorify it in this video. I just want to share my genuine experiences with being vegan for a month and show you a little bit of what I ate. Now, I remember my last time that I did the half-assed Veganuary, the biggest challenge was not eating vegan food, but it was making myself look presentable, putting on makeup, setting up the camera with lights and a microphone every day. I remember that was the biggest challenge. So this time I went easy on myself and I didn't do that. All the sections where I am eating and sampling the vegan dishes, I am in the kitchen with bad fluorescent lighting and not wearing any makeup. So you're welcome. So this, Japanese style breakfast is something I actually eat pretty regularly, and I often will have the vegan version of it. If I'm not having a vegan version of it, I might have some fish or fried egg or hard-boiled egg in place of or in addition to some of these sauteed veggies, but I like sauteed eggplant, sauteed kabocha it will usually be, but Wenko doesn't have kabocha, a little baby bok choy, a little fresh fruit, orange in this case, rice with black sesame seeds, and then miso soup. Usually miso soup has dashi in it, which is dried fish, but this actually doesn't. By accident, I bought the miso paste that does not have dashi in it. It's like, well, when I'm doing a vegan month, that doesn't matter. All right, we have vegan mashed potatoes with mushroom gravy and roast beet instead of roast beef. So basically the roasted beets are very easy. You just peel some beets and you roast them in the oven, coat them in olive oil, a spice blend of your choice, roast them at 425. I think it took about 45 minutes to roast these beets. Your time will vary depending on your beet size and oven hotness. Mashed potatoes, I made them kind of like normal mashed potatoes, except I used vegan butter and almond milk. And then the mushroom gravy, that was a more complicated process. I sauteed some mushrooms that I pureed in the food processor with some vegan butter, added some garlic. It looks red in this footage because there was beet juice on it. And then I added some smoked paprika and black pepper and some better than bouillon veggie paste and water. Oh, right, I added flour before I added the water. Let's eat it before it congeals and gets cold. Mushroom gravy is really good. I mean, if you don't like mushrooms, I guess it's not good. This is very good. This feels like too much mashed potato, but then I have to remember that these beets only have probably 100 calories total. Beets are very divisive, especially in my country. Most people in the US just don't seem to really like beets. I do, I like them. They taste kind of like rain and dirt. And they make your poop red, so they're just great. You should eat beets. So I had a few considerations with this month of veganism. One, this is like the dead of winter. This is cozy time. This is when I want to eat a lot of comfort food, soups and stews, etc. So I tried to do more of that kind of vegan food. I did not eat a single salad the entire month. Okay, vegan chili. I have had vegan chili before, but not with mock meat. So to make this, I used some soy rizo, which is mostly soy protein, and I sauteed that in oil, and I added some minced onion and garlic, and then some cumin, coriander, and chili powder, as well as some tomato paste. and a bay leaf. And then I added a cup of dried beans. I used kidney beans and black beans that I had soaked overnight. And then I covered that in water and I just simmered it gently for a couple hours until the beans were tender. And then I reduced the water at the end so it would be thick. And here we are. I've topped it with some avocado and fresh white onion, jalapeno, and cilantro. Usually when I have chili, I like to have a big huge mound of grated cheddar cheese on top. Considered doing vegan cheese, but I don't know, I think I would just be disappointed. Let's just eat this. Yeah, I'm kind of missing the lack of cheese, but like the chili itself is fine. Really, that's a secret to good vegan cooking, is just adding a bunch of spices and then you don't really notice there's no meat in it. Okay, finally I'm going to be eating one of my genuinely favorite foods that happens to be vegan, ratatouille. It's usually a summer treat for me because it's all like summer produce, but it's winter, so it's kind of nice having it in winter. It's really easy. You just finely dice some onion, zucchini, eggplant, and tomato. I've used canned tomatoes here because it's winter. And you layer it in a casserole dish with some olive oil, salt, red pepper flakes, and oregano. And I roasted in the oven at 400 degrees for about 1.5 hours, stirring a few times in between until it gets nice and concentrated and unctuous and lovely. And there are many different ways you can eat it. Like you can make it more like a stew. I like it more like a, I guess, topping. I like it best with toast. I made this bread myself. And I also like it in pasta. And I think at some other point in the month, I'm going to have this with some pasta, but with bread. This is so good. Genuinely one of my favorite foods to eat, and it happens to be vegan, so knew I had to make this. Okay, as always, whenever I make risotto, I overestimated how much zucchini I would need, so I had 2 extra zucchini left over, and I also had tomato juices left over from canned tomatoes and some tomato paste. So I reduced the tomato juices down to a sauce, and then I sauteed the zucchini with some onion and garlic, and then I added the tomato paste and cooked it down a bit, added some red wine and some other spices and herbs, and then I added the tomato sauce and cooked that down for a good 30 minutes or so, and then I pureed it, and yeah, there's olive oil in here too, of course. And this is kind of my basic go-to vegan tomato sauce for spaghetti, only I added a bunch of zucchini this time because I had it. And usually I'll use whole tomatoes, but I didn't have any. And there is a cat. Hi, Nika. She's been hunting raw pieces of spaghetti off the countertop because she's bored because I've lost her favorite toy and she wants her toy back. Anyway. Yeah, this is very satisfying. And this serving almost has an entire zucchini in it. Like it's a pretty good way to disguise veggies if you have picky eaters in your life who don't eat veggies. Just like puree some zucchini into some tomato sauce and they probably won't be any wiser. The other thing I wanted to consider is sometimes vegan influencers, especially the younger, hotter ones, will give you this aspirational sort of vegan lifestyle where they're eating a lot of imported fruits and like artisanal vegan cheeses and stuff. And I wanted something that's a little more attainable for normal people who don't have as much disposable income. Okay, I have never made quinoa tortillas before. So I'm gonna try this on camera for the first time while it is still warm. Friend gave me some quinoa flour a while ago and I don't know what to do with it. And I thought, well, it's a gluten-free flour similar to masa harina, so maybe I'll just make corn tortillas with it. So I mixed it with water and salt, and you mix it and then press it in a tortilla press and then fry it up in a skillet. And then you get this. Let's see how it tastes with this hummus. So this hummus came from our housemates. They had guests over and they were eating this a little tiny bit and they didn't finish it and they didn't want any more. So they're like, hey, do you want free hummus? And I'm like, yeah, free food. But my husband doesn't want it because it has bell pepper in it. He hates bell pepper, so it's vegan, so I'm gonna eat it now. Okay. This actually works. Okay, I make this dish a lot, even when I'm not being vegan. I even have a dedicated video to it. It ticks pretty much every single box you would want it to tick. It's cheap, it's easy to make, it's delicious, it's packed with protein, it's like pretty dang healthy. It uses a lot of pantry staples. It's great. So the most minimal version of this is just noodles and the sauce is peanut butter, sesame oil, chili powder, MSG, soy sauce, rice vinegar, sugar, and there's also garlic and ginger in the sauce, but I like to leave those things out and saute them in the oil just to bring out a little more flavor. And then to dress this up, you can add whatever you want, add vegetables, add meat, add whatever. I like to fry some tofu in oil. If you pan fry it first, it stays together like this and it doesn't like fall apart and gunk up your pan. And then I sauteed some carrot because they take longer to cook than the snow pea. I removed a little bit of the oil after I browned off the tofu because you need a lot to brown the tofu, but you don't need that much in the actual dish proper. And then I added the garlic and ginger last minute before I added the ramen noodles. And then you add a bit of the sauce with some of the ramen water, just, you know, treat it like an Italian pasta. It helps bring everything together and helps it prevent it from being so dry. And then I garnish with sesame seeds, and I'm gonna eat it now.
What? You want to be in the video? What you think, Nika?
So most of the vegan food that I ate this month is on the budget-friendly side. The third consideration, and this is just kind of my personal philosophy, but a lot of longer-time vegans also tend to have this philosophy. I wanted to try some mock meat that I have not tried before and some mock milk that I have not tried before, but for the most part, I wanted to eat more foods that were naturally vegan. So not so much mock meat, not so much mock cheese or other mock dairy, egg, meat products. I did a grocery haul for the first half of the month, and I'll link that video below if you want to check that out. But yeah, if you see what I bought, a lot of veggies, some fruits, a lot of legumes, some grains, and some plant-based milks, a variety of them. And then I also was going to fall back on some items that I already had in my pantry, things like rice, flour, nuts, dried fruits, etc.
I love you, Nika.
What are you doing? Does mommy's breath smell like veggie soup? I make this sort of thing all the time, even when I'm not being vegan for a video. Anyway, it is a saute of tofu and vegetable with a flavorful sauce made out of sesame oil, vegetarian oyster sauce, soy sauce, sugar, little MSG, little Szechuan peppercorns, some ginger. Anyway, it is wholesome and delicious, and I love it. So yeah, I didn't feel like making, you know, the same Japanese breakfast literally like 7 days in a row with all the tofu and other ingredients that I got, so I'm using them in different ways to make my life more interesting and to make this video more interesting. That was mostly just rice or tofu. Okay, I did a year of Greek cuisine a couple years ago where I just cooked as much Greek food as I could, and this is a bean soup that I actually liked, and it happened to be vegan, so I made it again. It's actually pretty simple preparation. You just take navy beans that you've soaked overnight, you boil them for about 5 minutes and drain them, and then you just add them to veggie stock with carrots, celery, and onions, a basic mirepoix, some crushed garlic, some salt, pepper, and a bay leaf, and some tomato paste, and you just cook it for about an hour, and then you add a bunch of olive oil, and then you cook it a little more, and it becomes this nice like creamy soup. And I garnish it with some black olives and a little parsley to make it look pretty. It's actually really creamy, and that's the olive oil, which is pretty cool. So by day 4 or so into the month, I realized that I would really need to not eat so many whole legumes if I was going to survive. That chili was particularly brutal because in addition to having 2 different kinds of whole beans, it also had mock meat, which was made of soy, which is also beans. It was just like a bunch of beans. And oh, my guts were not having it. I was in misery. Really the first 3 weeks of the entire month, my guts were in turmoil. But especially that first week when I was like eating more whole legumes. So I realized pretty quickly I had, again, a little more aspirational to make this video a little more interesting for people. I was going to make myself a vegan split pea soup. I was going to make myself some other things with whole legumes. But I was like, yeah, my guts are not going to have that. So in the interest of everybody being healthier and happier and less smelly, I opted out of having as many whole legumes for the rest of the month. And I decided to rely more on soy milk and like peanut butter for my protein requirements. Now, soy milk also gave me issues, not gonna lie, just nowhere near as bad as like whole beans, whole lentils, that stuff. Okay, this is a matcha latte, an easy one, that is. Basically, all you do is you take a spoonful of matcha powder. I got mine at Costco because it's so much cheaper that way. It's pretty expensive otherwise. You pour a little bit of boiling water in there and stir it really well, and then add the plant-based milk of your choice. I did soy milk, and then microwave it on medium heat for 5 to 6 minutes until it is hot. And then, you know, if you want to be fancy and you have a frother, definitely froth it. I have put this in the blender before to do that. It's nicer because there's also little bits of green tea that don't get dissolved all the way if you don't do that. And it's nice to give it a foam, but I don't feel like dirtying up my blender. And actually, in fact, it's still dirty from yesterday when I made a smoothie, so I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to drink it as is. This is my first time having a vegan matcha latte. I've had matcha lattes many times, though. Yeah, pretty decent. And this is a great way to get my protein for the day, since I've decided I cannot really eat a lot of mock meats or whole legumes anymore because I clear the room whenever I do that. And I also went off script a little. I am a major planner. Like, I like to plan my meals in advance, partly because it's fun and I like anticipating what I'm gonna eat. But also I like to avoid food waste. And if you plan your meals in advance, you can avoid food waste that way. But I realized as delicious as those roasted beets and mashed potatoes with mushroom gravy were, they weren't that delicious. Like, they were good, but I didn't want to eat them again. So I decided to repurpose that mushroom gravy as a sauce for pasta. And that was so good. That became one of my favorite dishes of the month. And then the rest of the beets, I juiced and drank juice because I had never tried beet juice before and I've always wanted to try it. I have always wanted to try beet juice, and now I finally am. Look at this amazing color. Ah! Okay, I love carrot juice, so I think this is probably going to be similar. It's probably going to be kind of sweet, but also it'll taste like rain on dirt, maybe. Whoa! That is intense. Ooh, it's very sweet. I was right. It is sweet, and it also does kind of, it smells and also tastes a little bit like fresh rain on dirt or pavement. Oh, yeah. If you hate beets, you're not gonna like this, but this is pretty nice actually. I'm sure my teeth are already turning pink. So I think one part of the vegan experience is dealing with other people in your life that are not vegan. My husband did not want to participate in Veganuary with me. He's one of those people, I don't know if you know somebody like this or if you are like this, he's one of those people who just does not feel full from a meal if there's no meat in it. Like, if there's enough cheese in there, maybe, and there's some meals where, like, he likes falafel sandwiches, for example, but generally he doesn't really feel full from a meal unless there's meat in it, and just, he was not going to participate in Veganuary with me. So since he's disabled and doesn't really cook on his own, if left to his own devices, he would just eat a box of Cheez-Its every single day or nothing at all. I batch cooked him a lot of like very hearty, meaty things like pot roast, and I made him a pot of zuppa toscana. I made him like a sausage stew. I got him a bunch of sausages that he could easily reheat with buns. I made him a pizza. He ate all the leftover carnitas that I made for New Year's Eve as burritos. So he was very well fed this month and he ate a lot of his favorite dishes. We lived downstairs from some friends of ours, and they actually were a lot more accommodating than my husband. I'm painting my husband to like be this horrible person. He's a great person. He just didn't want to do Veganuary. But my friends upstairs, we always have a communal meal with them every Wednesday, and we also play Pathfinder that evening. It's a nice, hey, both houses get together and hang out sort of thing every Wednesday evening. And they cook dinner, usually, and then sometimes we cook dinner. And I told them, hey, it's cool. You guys don't have to like make all vegan dinners on Wednesdays. Like, as long as there's some vegan component, I'll be fine. And they said, no, we want to take the opportunity to explore and like learn some vegan stuff too. So they were actually very accommodating and made, I'm about to have another one of their vegan suppers like a few hours after I record this video. So I can't speak about that one yet, but the two vegan suppers that they made were quite nice. The very first day of Veganuary was a Wednesday, and they made this pasta dish with some mock meat sausage in it, and it was actually quite tasty. It was one of my top 5 favorite meals. It was the sauce of tomatoes and roasted peppers and tahini and a little vegan milk, blended and pureed really smooth, and then there was some zucchini chunks and vegan sausage chunks. This particular vegan sausage, it was the least sausage and meat like of all the mock meats I've ever had, but it was a kind of my favorite. It was more grain based, so it didn't wreck my guts. And that was really tasty. And then they had a variety of vegan ice creams to try, and all of those were really tasty too. They were very, very expensive. They were the hoity-toity kind of little small batch vegan ice creams that your younger, hotter vegan influencers that I mentioned at the beginning of the video might be inclined to eat. They were so good though. There was like a chocolate mushroom one, which wound up being my favorite. There was an oat milk one with some caramel. And then there was a sorbet that was passion fruit and lemon, I believe. That was really tasty. My husband and I also go out with our upstairs neighbors, just the adults, once a month, usually on a double date. And once again, instead of going to an all vegan restaurant, we went to a restaurant that had vegan options. We're in Portland, so there's no shortage of that here. Although it's worth noting that it took us a good half hour to find a good restaurant that had vegan options. A lot of restaurants that say they have vegan options, it's kind of hard to find them, and it's also a little confusing and unclear if it's vegan or vegetarian. We found a place that was like a South American Mexican fusion restaurant, and that was honestly my favorite meal that I had in the entire month. I think part of it was just, I like being treated nicely. I like people bringing me food and sitting in a nice restaurant. It feels so special to me because I grew up poor and we never really went out to eat. But I had some yuca fries. I had some banana flour tacos that reminded me a lot of fish tacos. They deep fried the banana flour, so it was sort of like a fish taco. And then afterwards we went out to Salt and Straw, which is a popular ice cream chain I also think there's some in LA. I don't think it's exclusive to Portland, but they had all of their seasonal, limited edition seasonal stuff all happened to be vegan. And I had a Marionberry cobbler ice cream, which was delicious. And I felt very Portlandian. And then when I hosted the dinners, I always like to show off when I host dinner. So I made falafel sandwiches from scratch for one of them. I made the falafel from scratch, and I made the pita from scratch, and I made the sauces that go with it. And then I made a vegan coconut milk rice pudding that was really, really tasty. And then for my other dinner that I hosted, I made the Give Peas a Chance burger from the Bob's Burgers burger book. Watch my series where I tried literally every single burger in that cookbook. I made it pretty much as is in the cookbook, except that version was an ovo-lacto vegetarian version, so it had egg and it had butter in it. I replaced the butter with vegan butter, and I replaced the egg with 2 pieces of okra, minced really finely and pureed. I discovered from another burger in that book that okra, if you puree it, kind of makes a good egg substitute in terms of if you're using it as a binder, which is what it is in this veggie burger, because okra is slimy, so it kind of has that similar texture that egg has. So I made those burgers out of black-eyed peas, green peas, mushrooms, breadcrumbs. I added a little nutritional yeast. That's another area where I went off script, and that okra. And I fried them up and served them just like I would normal burgers. And then I made one of my favorite things for the month. I made a vegan chocolate cake with toffee apple frosting. I have a dedicated video to that, so definitely check that out if you're interested. But I can definitely see how lonely and frustrating it can be to have any kind of dietary restriction or to be on any kind of restrictive diet, not just vegan. But yeah, it's kind of hard when you're the only person in a group of people who has a certain kind of restricted diet. But luckily, my friends are accommodating. All right, I got some pumpkin spice. Ooh, there's a hair on my lens. All right, I got some pumpkin spice, or butternut squash spice, I should say, pancakes with vegan butter and maple syrup. I roasted some butternut squash and then I pureed it, added some almond milk and some pumpkin spice spices, baking powder, a little salt, and flour. No eggs because it's vegan. I guess I could have added some aquafaba if I had any, but I didn't, so I didn't. Okay, some vegan soul food. I got this recipe online for deep fried chicken. It's actually cauliflower. I'll provide the link below. So I made this recipe for 2 reasons. 1, I wanted to try some vegan junk food. And then 2, I wanted an excuse to make vegan mayo, which is what I used in this coleslaw. So the vegan mayo, it was weird, not gonna lie, and I thought that I messed it up, but I trusted the process. It's soy milk and then some vinegar and some other things, and you just process that forever, adding oil very, very, very slowly, like you would a normal mayonnaise with eggs. But it doesn't come together as quickly as normal mayonnaise, and it was just really thin and soupy for a long time, and I was worried I was going to burn out the motor of my food processor. But I trusted the process, and it worked, and I got mayonnaise. And I combined that with a little lemon juice and the cabbage and carrots to make this vegan coleslaw. So let me just... It works in a pinch. It's all right. Now, as for these fried chickens or fried cauliflowers, you make a dredge of flour and a bunch of spices, and then you make a wet dredge. Ordinarily, you might use egg or buttermilk, definitely, but since this is vegan, it was a little bit of almond milk and then a lot of hot sauce. Again, I was skeptical, but I trusted the process. Also a little mustard. And you go into the wet and the dry, and then the wet and the dry again. And then you fry them. And I made them smaller so that hopefully they would be cooked all the way through and nice and crispy. I don't think these will be at all like fried chicken, but they will probably be tasty because they're deep fried. See? Not fried chicken. The reason why that wet batter is mostly hot sauce is because this cauliflower is kind of flavorless and it really needs it. All the spices that you put into the breading and the dredge, that's basically the flavor. The breading is basically, you know, the heart of this dish. And yeah, it's tasty. It is not fried chicken, but it is tasty.
What do you think, Nika?
You scrunched up your face. You don't like it? So by week 3, my guts were starting to calm down a lot more, and a lot of that's because I had mostly by then cut out whole legumes out of the equation, and I was drinking way more soy milk for my protein. A question that always comes up, like I see it in comment sections all the time, and I've seen vegan influencers like address comments like this all the time. For some reason, omnivores like suddenly become nutritional experts whenever a vegan just talks about, hey, I'm vegan. Then you like get all these unsolicited comments like, oh, that's so unhealthy. How are you getting your B12? How are you getting your protein? How are you getting these vitamins? And so for those people who might be watching this video, I did take some supplements during the month. I took B12 and I also took vitamin D. I live up in the Pacific Northwest. I need to be taking it this time of year anyway. I've been taking calcium, magnesium, and iron anyway, just for my general health and making sure I'm filling in any potential gaps. And I've also been taking fish oil, and I kept taking fish oil. So yes, oh my God, I kind of cheated and had like a teaspoon of fish oil every single day for the month. I know there is a vegan version of that. I think it's flaxseed oil, but I did not feel like shelling out the money to buy another bottle of that supplement when I already have a giant thing of fish oils. So I decided, you know what? I can have fish oil. And that's another thing about veganism that I personally think some people, they don't get it wrong, but people seem to have this idea that veganism has to be all or nothing, that you have to be completely vegan or not vegan. And like, you can be varying degrees of vegan. You can be a vegan who eats ice cream on their birthday. You can be a vegan who eats non-vegan food when they go out to eat at restaurants. You can be a vegan who takes fish oil pills. Or you can be a non-vegan who eats vegan food every Monday. So for the purposes of this month, I was a vegan who takes fish oil pills. Having said that, I did feel a little lower on energy and a little lightheaded and dizzy by my second week. I'm not entirely sure though that that was veganism specifically. I have trouble sleeping, I'm an insomniac, I am getting that a little bit better, have been getting a little better with my sleep recently. It is a multifactored thing, I am not asking for advice. But also I was in a calorie deficit the entire month. I figured, well, I'm eating not necessarily my favorite foods for a month, I might as well jumpstart my diet and like be on a bigger calorie deficit than I'm used to being on. So I think that was probably what most of my potential occasional like lightheadedness came from, not necessarily from being vegan. And like I said, by the third week, all of that went away and everything. My overall health felt better by week 3. My guts were happier, my brain and head and stuff were happier. I wouldn't say that like I felt better than I feel as an omnivore, but I don't think I felt worse either.
Hello, Yvain.
Okay, this is actually the second day after I've made this. I forgot to film myself eating it on the first. But anyway, this is my take on congee. It's a black rice porridge made with sauteed onions, ginger garlic paste, and some coconut oil. Add a little coriander and chili powder, and then add black rice, which is a lovely product. It looks gross when it's cooked, but it has a really nice deep flavor and a lot of nutrients, and add veggie broth and cook it for about an hour, stirring occasionally. And then at the end, I stir it vigorously, and I didn't feel like stirring it vigorously to break up the kernels and make it creamy and porridge-like. So I got out an immersion blender and I just blended it. And honestly, that worked out really well. I might just do that from now on. And then I fried some tofu, and I had a little bit of okra left over from my veggie burgers, so I fried some of that off as well. Added that as a garnish with some cilantro and sesame seeds. This is really comforting, and I really like it with the bits of crispy fried tofu. I wish I had more tofu. I didn't have quite enough for my next batch. And I wish okra were more popular in my part of the US. It's really delightful vegetable. It's like a little slimy on the inside, but to me it's just like a much tastier, more pleasant version of green beans. Okay, it is not often that I just make recipes randomly from the internet. It is a creamy vegan pasta. I'll provide a link to the recipe below, but it's basically sauteed onions and garlic and coconut oil, and then you add some flour and some red pepper flakes and some water to deglaze it and kind of make a thick sauce. I'm trying to remember what else there was. There was smoked paprika and soy sauce and black pepper and salt, of course, and tahini. The recipe called for coconut milk or oat milk, but I used soy milk because I have an overabundance of it, and nutritional yeast.
What, you wanna try? You wanna try?
She's just purring and weaving around my legs and meowing.
Mwah. Ha. You gonna try? You can try some later, okay?
Anyway, let's try this. I didn't even taste it as it was cooking. I wanted to be surprised on camera. Yeah, this is genuinely quite nice. It has a nice complex flavor to it. I think there aren't actually that many spices, but all the different flavoring components. Oh yeah, I put some yellow mustard in at the end. That's the other thing that I added. But yeah, I think between the tahini and the nutritional yeast and the milk and the smoked paprika and soy sauce, all of that gives it a lot of really nice umami notes. And it's very creamy from the tahini and from the flour and the vegan milk. And I think it would be tasty with mushrooms, so I might try that later in the week.
Okay, you wanna try some, honey? Here. Try some sauce.
And by the final week, which is now, I'm just done. I'm so looking forward to not eating vegan food anymore. I've already planned what I'm going to be eating afterwards. It's the Lunar New Year starting today, and I make pot stickers every year. I did not want to make vegan pot stickers. I like making them with lamb, so I'm gonna do that this Sunday. It's still technically gonna be Lunar New Year, but yeah, now that I see the end in sight, I'm definitely like looking forward to no longer needing to be vegan. So anyway, that was my Veganuary. I am not going to be vegan after this. I didn't go into this month with the intention of let's see how it feels, and then if I like it, I'm gonna be vegan. It was more just for fun, just to see what it's like. But whenever I do any of these kinds of restricted diets, I always learn something. I always come out the other side with some new dish, some new technique, or some new ingredient that I incorporate into my rotation. And yeah, 2 of those pasta dishes I think I might incorporate into the rotation. And I learned just even further that mock meats really ain't it. And I learned that the deep fried cauliflower, that was like my 6th favorite thing that I ate in the month, were that like vegan fried chicken basically, which was just fried cauliflower. That was really tasty. I would definitely make that again. I wouldn't necessarily make it as a main dish, but I think it could be a really nice side dish for something. So yeah, this is your call to action to experiment. Try some vegan things. You might actually like them. Maybe you won't like them, but it'll be a fun experience regardless. And with egg prices out of control and regulations going out the window in my country at least, it's not a bad idea to look into vegetarian cooking, just for your own safety. On that happy note, happy February! I hope that worked.